This is the second webinar we are having with Erika, and I'm really happy to have Christoph and Ian with us, but I'm going to give the word to them now and let them introduce themselves and introduce Erika a little bit. So, I don't know, Ian, let's start from you.
Sure, sounds good. Hi, I'm Ian. I'm an e-resident since 2015, just under the 1-year anniversary mark. So I've been around here for a little while. I joined e-residency, or I became an e-resident just because I thought it was kind of a cool idea. I didn't really have any like grand ideas of what I wanted to do with it or anything at the time. I just thought this was a really interesting idea and an innovative project from government, and I'd never really seen anything like that before. So I signed up, went to the embassy in Washington, D.C., picked up my card, and went to Estonia. My first trip to Estonia was for Latitude 59, which I highly recommend going to. It was really great to meet all kinds of people from the local startup scene, as well as a few e-residents along the way, including this guy on the webinar here with me, Christoph. And I've established my company in Estonia already, several actually, but my most active one was established in 2017. That's a IT consulting company. And I now run my company independently, location independently from Seoul, South Korea.
So can you please tell us a little more, why is e-residency a good solution for you, or why did you choose e-residency? Was it just the innovativeness of the program, or?
Yeah, I mean, that was why I signed up, but I guess why I stick around. The community is actually a really big thing. The community of e-residents is something really special. I've never seen quite a community like this of like-minded, location-independent entrepreneurs, but on a more practical note, then being remote, not quite as remote as Christoph in some senses, but it's really nice to be able to do everything online. I couldn't do that in the US. I would have to hire an attorney or something there locally and do everything over paper documents with physical signatures, and it's a bit of a hassle. So e-residency is cool because it's not like, oh, I can make this thing work. They actually really designed it for people like me, which I think is really cool.
That's great. So you are a US citizen who lives in Seoul at the moment, and you have a company in Estonia. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, my wife is Korean. That's how I ended up in Seoul. For anyone else wondering.
Cool. I'm going to ask you about taxation later if no one
Yes, for sure.
Okay, Christoph.
Love tax questions.
Christoph, what about you?
Yeah, the e-residency program is just so much of a community that I'm just in this very moment on my second screen here chatting with Ian's business partner, Luke, who is sitting in Switzerland these days. Just sent him a picture of what's happening here. Because I'm in Asia as well, not in Korea as Ian. I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand at the moment, which is kind of a productivity booster for me. And my story, my e-residency story is a bit different from Ian's, a bit younger. I just started in 2017 and right away with forming a company. So I visited Tallinn for a week, a very intense week, with a full day program from morning to late night, with visiting the Estonia showroom, visiting companies like TransferWise or Pipedrive, with who we are actually working in my company for a while. So Pipedrive is actually the backbone of my business. And there I learned about, or I had heard about the e-residency program long before that, from more like a political perspective, but there I figured out how I can actually use it for me. And I was in an urgent need for to make myself more location independent. When I first finished school, I went full-time self-employed and have never been bound to some kind of an office working together with others on a daily basis. but more over distance all the time. And my current company is now a growing team of 6 at the moment, 7 from January, my business partner and me, and 4 and then 5 fully employed staff members with social security and all that kind of stuff, but fully remotely. So the whole company at its official address in Germany, Leverkusen near Cologne. The only thing it owns there is the little sign at the letterbox, and that's everything. So the whole team is distributed all over Europe and beyond. One of my team members is actually sitting next to me at the moment. Sorry for the improper dress, but we're next to the pool. I just put on my t-shirt right before we started here. Yeah, and so in November back in 2017, after that trip, I immediately applied for this little card. And then as soon as I had it, I started my company and transformed this into holding and chairs.
Christoph, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you were frozen for me as well for a moment, but
Okay. I think it's fine now. I'm gonna let our listeners know that whenever you have any questions for Christoph and Ian, then please write to the Q&A. They're here to answer all your questions about e-residency. But Christoph, so for you, the first thing was interest towards Estonia in general, the business environment in Estonia, and then you learned about e-residency and decided to join, right?
Yeah, kind of both. So the trip happened also because of e-Estonia.
Okay.
So this was all connected from the beginning, and there was a big curiosity from my side and from my German business partner side as well, who is now e-resident too, and also the 2 other co-founders of our German company are e-residents now, and we are forming all together something new in Estonia. So it's a bit like, I think my story is very similar to the one of Ian and to most other active Erika members. That in the very first step, Estonia and the e-residency is just some kind of a tool, a vehicle for your business activities. And the more you do with and through it, the more people you get to know, the more you learn about the business mentality, and then you become curious. Then you want to know more, then you visit maybe for the first time, and then the second time, and then the 10th time. You make friends on the ground. You go to latitude 59, which is always a great idea. So everyone listening here, it's May 28 and 29 next year, when there will be the next Latitude 59 Startup Conference. And what's very special about the one next year is that there will be an e-residency festival right after that. So it's not only a business and startup conference taking place, which is from Thursday to Friday, yeah. But from Friday evening to Sunday, we are organizing for the first time a festival that brings. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You hear me? Yeah. We are organizing a festival that brings together e-residents and Estonians for a cultural exchange. To answer the question of all these Estonians, like who are these e-residents, and vice versa, all these curious e-residents who want to learn about Estonian mentality, food, culture, politics,
language,
movies, language, of course. So Ian and me and all our fellow board members at Erika, which is actually, I think we didn't mention that yet,
yes,
Estonian e-Residents International Chamber Association. All of us are learning Estonian.
Yes.
Which is quite intriguing. Well, miks mitte?
Väga tubli. So Erika, it's like a chamber of e-residents, basically, right?
Yeah, it's the idea is similar to a chamber of commerce, but it's the practical, like, digital evolution of this. Because you think of like a traditional chamber of commerce, it's like usually restricted to a city or a country or something like that. But in the case of e-residents, then we're operating internationally. And so the thing that we have in common is that we're all operating cross-border businesses and that we're all connected to Estonia. And so we need to have some representation, we feel, in the Estonian environment, since most of us don't live there, because by definition we're e-residents, we're not physical residents.
Okay. So,
but in addition to just the normal like chamber of commerce, then we view it as also like a kind of a community. It's like a social network of the really active e-residents. These are the people that are really active, that are using their e-residency, that are creating companies. And these are people who can be your mentors, your future business partners, the people you can go to ask questions when you run into a problem that you haven't experienced with, like taxes, for example.
Okay, so how many members do you have at Erika?
Somewhere in the triple digits. I don't remember how high
number
it is.
at the moment.
That's awesome. But anyone who already has e-residency can join.
You know, a big e-residency or residency. So even Estonians can do that. Actually, the only thing you need to have is this chip. And the annual membership fee is just like symbolic €5. Yeah, for us, a big milestone was to have the 100 members. That happened just a couple of weeks after we founded, and since then we. I think someone of us is counting. I think Kirill has the numbers
Kirill,
and at his dashboard somewhere. But yeah, I stopped counting because it's. I'm not able to calculate such big numbers.
Yeah, as Christoph said, we do encourage Estonians as well to join, because we want this to also be a way for e-residents to connect to Estonia, and vice versa. We want this to really have value for both sides.
That's an excellent idea, I think. Yeah, but how does it work? So if anyone joins Erika, then they can find each other's contact details there and can write or call or whatever and ask questions. Is that right?
It's similar to Facebook. You don't just like automatically get their email address or phone number or something. If you put that in your profile, sure, you can do that. But it's similar to Facebook, where we have a kind of public groups and just a giant like message board. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a forum. And then you can of course do direct private messaging and group messaging as well.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Let me see if we have no questions yet. Then I will start torturing you with the tax questions.
Yeah.
Hey, Ian, I will start with you. So as you said before, you're a US citizen who moved to Seoul and you have a company in Estonia. So yeah. Where do you pay your corporate taxes?
Everywhere. No, the corporate side is actually pretty easy. I am lucky to live in a country where they don't care so much about trying to claim your company's tax residency. Let me back up a second, actually. So when you first create an Estonian company, then it is considered to be tax resident in Estonia. No surprise, really. And then it is up to other countries to dispute that classification. So in the case of South Korea, then I've checked with, I think 5 accountants now to make sure that this wasn't going to be some complicated issue. And they all said that as long as I don't have a whole bunch of like Korean clients or something like that, then they don't care. They won't dispute my company's tax residency. So in the case of corporate taxes, then my company is just like an Estonian company. In the case of personal tax, if you wanted to go there, then that gets even more complicated though.
What about US? Isn't US kind of like, because you are a US citizen, isn't that
Yes.
like bottleneck for your taxation issues?
For my personal taxes, yes, and actually the company side to some extent as well. So this was actually news to me. I didn't realize this before I went ahead and created the Estonian company. Any company that is at least 10% owned by any US person, which is defined as either a natural person, like a human like us, or a legal person, like Facebook Inc., has to report basically a mini annual report to the US Internal Revenue Service. So I have to submit all these documents at the end of every year saying like the state of my company's financials. Because I'm a US citizen, as does my co-founder. So we have to file this informational form, though. That doesn't actually affect the corporate taxes directly. Then, though, Donald Trump decided that he didn't like the way Facebook, Apple, and Google were parking their profits offshore in Ireland. And so what he did was he said, okay, any company that has US shareholders, then we're going to attribute any remaining income and retained earnings at the end of the year that exceeds that entity's physical immovable assets, things like factories, equipment, things like that, to the shareholders individually. So basically what that means is for tech companies like ours, which have no assets, we don't own real estate, we don't own all this property or anything. So we have to end up paying taxes personally on retained earnings. So what this ends up doing is effectively forcing us to either pay everything out in dividends or pay it out as salaries or spend it or something like that. Otherwise, we're going to get taxed on it personally anyways back in the US.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. That is fun. Additionally, anything that you make as a US citizen over $100,000 or that isn't already taxed at a higher rate in another country, you have to pay taxes on in the US as if you had made it as regular income. So I end up getting a small amount of double tax in the US because of this problem. And then my Korean tax situation is a little bit complicated because they have a 5-year period where foreigners don't have to pay income taxes on funds that aren't transferred back to Korea. So what I end up doing is I have to pay taxes on all the money that I bring to Korea in Korea for the first 5 years, but I don't have to pay taxes on the rest of it. But it doesn't really matter because it ends up getting taxed by the US anyways. So in a few years, then I'll end up paying all of my taxes in Korea, basically, because the Korean tax rates are higher than the US tax rate, so that'll cancel it out. But for the interim period where I'm getting a sort of tax holiday because of the 5-year rule in Korea, then I end up paying a mix of taxes in Korea and in the US.
What's the corporate income tax in Korea?
That's, I think, 10% for small companies. It's based on revenue. After you exceed a certain amount, then I think it goes up to 15 or something, but it's not crazy.
Okay, thanks. But what about you, Christoph? I see that you have already one question in Q&A as well. That's saying to you. I don't know if you saw it.
I've already answered it
okay.
here in written form. Yeah, the question by Bogdan. Yeah, I hope we don't need to deep dive too much into taxes here and come back to the community aspect of e-residency later. But of course, this is always a thing, and we have made jokes before that, before we started. Of course, we are prepared for all kinds of tax questions, and I guess we will also come to banking later. So
interesting part about you for me is that I know that you're from Germany, but as I understand, right at the moment you travel so much that you call yourself a digital nomad, which means that you're not a tax resident anywhere. Is that true?
I don't call myself a digital nomad.
Okay, sorry, I called.
Everyone else does.
Yeah, I would rather call myself something like a location independent entrepreneur.
Is that cooler
which is
than
much better.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not neither a yoga teacher but let's skip that.
Okay.
Yeah, the answer to Bogdan is quite easy. And there is two ways of answering that. First, my very personal situation. This is my German ID card. And usually on German ID cards, you have your address on the back, and mine just says keine Hauptwohnung in Deutschland, which means like I'm not registered in Germany anymore.
Yes.
That means I'm traveling the world all year around. When I come Germany, I come as here. I was in Germany maybe like 3 weeks maximum. I don't know. And I'm not registered anywhere else either. So I don't have a real address. Of course, you can send me postcards if you want to my scan box in Berlin. There it will be scanned and sent to me digitally, and the original will be shredded according to GDPR. But that means actually yes. Fortunately, I do not have a US citizenship because the US is with another, I always forget which one, I think a small African country, the only country in the world that
Eritrea.
taxes you on, Eritrea, that taxes you based on your citizenship. I'm not sure how much Eritrea can actually enforce that, but the US can, because they have big influence on banks worldwide, and if you do not declare your stuff to US authorities, then yeah, US authorities are capable of making your life hard.
Very much so.
All other taxation country, in every country's tax law in the world, it starts like to who this is to be applied, and then it defines who is a taxpayer and who is a taxpayer. And when this is defined, there's also the opposite, who is not. And in most sense of having an apartment where you have access to school there and things like that, you are more like a traveler and not a tax resident. This works in more or less easy from all European countries. Some countries make it more complicated to sign off. Germany is surprisingly easy with that. So it has maybe together with the US, one of the most complicated taxation systems, especially when it comes to foreign income taxation. But to sign off from Germany works surprisingly easy. You just walk up at the authority building, tell them, I'm not living here anymore. They don't ask you where you're going. Don't need to prove anything. And you even get a nice certificate for that, made with a stamp and a signature.
Where do you pay your health insurance?
That's another topic. I would like to come back on that later, because this is actually a topic that's kind of as big as the taxation topic when it comes to location-independent entrepreneurs and even digital nomads. First, I would like to come back to Bogdan's situation and the original question, which is the second route. Showed you mine, for which actually e-residency is the perfect vehicle. So this is a big part of my tool set to make this even possible.
Could you rewind about 10 seconds, Christoph? We missed most of that.
Yeah, you froze, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just praising e-residency again as a big part of my tool set for my location-independent lifestyle. But there are people maybe like Bogdan who cannot or don't want to live a similar lifestyle, and who are location-based, maybe because of family, because of health issues or whatever. And in that situation, things become a little bit more complicated and actually tax-wise a bit more expensive, because then you lose half the fun of having your Estonian company. The other half you keep. So the other half is the ease of doing business, the digital way of managing everything. Actually, that's one half that made it so interesting for me. Being an entrepreneur in Germany for about 20 years, I lived through the situation of traveling for more than 3 weeks. Always made me uncomfortable because there could be a letter from a German authority lying back in my letterbox with a short-term deadline on something, tax declaration or things like that. And that became painful all the time, to the fear of missing a letter from an authority. Since I have my Estonian company, I did not receive a single letter by an Estonian authority. And the Estonian guy next to me is smiling like, yeah, what are you talking about, letter from authority?
What are these things, these relics of the past? So, Christoph, just to clarify, even if you're living in Germany, then when you're running an Estonian company, then you're not really going to get a whole lot of correspondence from the German authorities.
And that's what I
mean. Even though your company is technically your company is probably going to be tax resident in Germany, so you would have to do that kind of reporting, but it's not going to be nearly as complicated. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And that's what I mean. When I say if you are a tax resident of Germany, then you lose half the fun, and that half you lose is the taxation. The one you keep is the one of ease of doing business and not getting letters. Yep. The other half gets a bit more complicated, because if you are a tax resident of, let's say, any Western country, because they, except the US, there is a bit different, but any Western country that's based on territorial taxation, let's put it that way, things are pretty much the same and as follows. Mm-hmm. If you are, let's stay with Bogdan's example here, if you are a tax resident of Germany and you run your business through Estonia or any other country where this company is not substantial by definition of your country of residency, then this company will be taxed just as if it was a German company. So this means, Bogdan, if you now have the alternative for your business activities to whether found a German GmbH or UG, so you want to go down that road anyway, or you do the Estonian company. So if you are already willing to take the burden of corporate taxation and corporate annual declarations and stuff in Germany, it doesn't make a big difference. You can do both, but you keep yourself much more flexible, especially if you want to leave the country later on. From your name, I understand that you might be Hungarian. So if you want to go back to Hungary or to any other country, then it's much easier to keep that Estonian company with you than a German company. And what you have to do is actually back then your Estonian company does all the bookkeeping, the accounting according to Estonian law. And then in the end, Romanian you are, I'm sorry, but I guess your name could also be at least the first name. I know Hungarians with that name. And actually I also know Bulgarians with that name. So I guess it's quite common in that area. So where was I? Yeah, so you do the accounting in Estonia, but then you have to make an annual report according to German law. So you need to report your annual profit to the German Finanzamt, and then you have to pay the federal and the municipalities profit tax in Germany. And that's what I mean with taking out half of the fund, but that's the tax you had to pay with your German GmbH or UG anyway, and the declaration you have to make anyway. And so what you need to have is a German accountant or tax. Actually, in Germany, this is a regulated industry, so you have to have a certified tax advisor, Steuerberater, who will set up the annual declaration and the tax declaration for you. I can recommend one or two people who are familiar with Estonian German cross-border declarations and taxation. If you, yeah, just hit me up afterwards. I will write down my email address here, and then we can take it from there. Yeah, that's how it works with people who are tax residents anywhere. In some other countries, it's a bit easier, but you need to be very aware of, in basically every country, you have to declare your foreign income. And even if it's a country that's, let's say, not as efficient with processing these declarations, if you do not declare it, this is tax evasion and a criminal act. I know people living in countries like Turkey, where it's, let's say, not a part of general mentality and habits to declare everything to the authorities, but you should be very aware of the risk that this might backfire.
I see we've got a question here about doing retail sales on Amazon. I'll try and answer that one live here real quick. When you have, just because you have customers in the United States doesn't mean that you would have to file any kind of taxes there, at least at the federal level. I think Amazon will probably be taking care of your state tax collection, but don't quote me on that. If you're using FBA though, then I think Amazon would take care of that. So you would end up having to collect state sales tax in most states, because most states do have a state sales tax, but I don't think that your company would end up establishing any taxable presence there. So I think that you're probably fine on that front. You may need to apply for an employer identification number, EIN, in the IRS portal, but okay, if you're doing your own online store, then you're definitely going to want a US-based accountant to sort through all that for you, because you will owe, or you will be responsible for collecting state sales taxes in almost the entire US. So that's something you're going to want to have to sort out with an accountant. Martina, I see that you asked a question about what type of banking is better to use. If you could maybe put a little more details into the Q&A here, then that would be great. Otherwise, I'll just talk for a quick minute about what I use personally. So I accept most of my funds via TransferWise, because that's the easiest way to accept US dollars as a Estonian company. Most of the Estonian banks do not have US dollar correspondent clearing relations, so you pretty much have to use TransferWise, which is fine because it's a really great service. I run pretty much all my company's revenue through that. Most of my customers are US based. I also have a number that are European based, and those can pay me either through TransferWise if they want, or usually I'll just do euros, and in that case they would go to our LHV account. We do have an LHV account. It's definitely possible to get one. It depends on a couple of factors though. First, you need to be from a non-FATF blacklist country. So if you're from you're from Greece, so I think you're fine. But if you're from like Iran or North Korea or something like that, then you're not going to get an account anywhere. Otherwise, then you've passed step one. Awesome. Next step is you need to pass a basic KYC check with the bank. So they're going to ask for your passport as well as a whole bunch of information about your company, your planned business activities. They want to see that you're a legitimate entrepreneur with a real business purpose for opening an account. They often cite in the literature like connection to Estonia. That really is kind of a fuzzy concept, and that applies more to a larger company that's trying to apply, or something that's doing like a crypto license or something that's higher risk. They're going to want to see a much stronger connection to Estonia. If you are a single shareholder, solo entrepreneur, then your chances of getting accepted are significantly higher than if you're a multi-shareholder operation. Anything else that I missed there? They really like, simple IT consulting kind of things. If you're doing physical products, then that's a bit more complicated for anti-money laundering registration and all that stuff. So hopefully that answered your questions. If you have anything more detailed, then definitely post in the Q&A. But I use both traditional and fintechs.
Christoph, did you see you already answered it as well?
Yeah, I answered it, but I want to come back on that here publicly. Josip asked again about the taxation and the foreign income declaration, especially if you do not pay yourself a salary from the company. And this sounds a bit misguided. And actually, yes, Josip, this is what I was talking about before with the term substantial. If the company is not substantial in the country of its registration, then in most countries this is being seen as a virtual company or a letterbox company that's not actually active in that country, and then you have to declare the profits back to the country where you are. And so this means that the rules for being recognized as substantial are different in the countries, but basically if you are controlling the company all yourself, you do not have employees, you do not have an office or a shop or storage or anything in the country of registration, then you most probably will have to declare the profits of the company to your country's tax authorities, and you will have to pay the local income, the local profit tax on that, even though you do not take out a single euro of your Estonian company. But as I started into the definition of substantial company, of course, there are, I would not call it workarounds, but there are, let's say, possible company setups that, if they make sense from the business, give you the opportunity of utilizing the tax rules of the country of the establishment. So as you guys most probably all have heard or already researched, Estonia is tax competitive, especially for its unique system in Europe of a deferred profit taxation. The only country in the European Union where you do not pay annual profit taxes, but only you pay a deferred corporate income tax only on distributed dividends. This is important to know for several reasons, because what you pay out, so Estonia has a flat tax of 20% on everything. So the VAT, the personal income tax, and the profit tax is 20%, but the profit tax is deferred to the distributed dividends. And actually there is a super interesting exception for Estonian residents. That means if the dividends are being taxed with the 20% when they are being paid out to the personal account to an Estonian resident,
Christoph, we lost you. Christoph, we lost you.
Be taxed with income addition connection here. Am I back?
Yes, but please repeat it again.
Yeah.
It was a really important point and we lost everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. So once again, if you are Estonian resident and you pay out dividends to yourself, you only pay the deferred profit taxation once to 20%. You do not pay income tax on that dividend in addition. This is different if you are living in two different, or if your company and you are in two different countries. So let's say if you are a tax resident of Germany and your Estonian company pays dividends to your German bank account, then this means you did not pay income tax in Estonia. Your company paid the deferred profit taxation, the 20%, and the dividends you receive need to be taxed in Germany, whether with the source tax of 26.725%, so it's 25% plus the solidarity tax that comes from German reunification and is still being paid today, but that's another topic. Germans also still pay a special tax on sparkling wine that was introduced for the naval fleet in World War I and is still existing. Yeah, it's 26.725% of source tax or your personal income tax rate, whichever is cheaper in this case. But that's not what I wanted to talk about originally. The question by Joseph was about the tax
declaration.
The substantial. That's what I wanted to talk about. If it makes sense for your business model, that for example you have a setup that looks like the Estonian OÜ, the OSA Ühing, so the limited liability company, is a capital company, so it's a legal entity by itself. And if you run your business through legal entities, especially if you later on want to whether pay out dividends or you want to trade your shares, it makes some sense to wrap a holding structure around that. So if you have your operational company here and you have your holding company on top of that, which holds the shares, if you're running a company as a daughter of that, you find on the operational company. And if this company, let's say if this operational company is quite an active one and your role is the one as an indirect shareholder, and you hire a Estonian or nomadic director for that, then there is, and you are yourself, whether not even in the operational business at all, so you're just acting as a shareholder, or you are an operational employee, so you're performing services for the company, but you are not the managing director, then you come closer to having a company which is substantial in the operational company, which is substantial in the country of its establishment. If that company then also has some employees where it pays all the salary taxes like income taxes and social taxes, and maybe even whether runs an own business or has a contract with a local co-working space like Spring Hub or Lift 99 in Estonia, where you maybe regularly meet twice a year, maybe around Latitude 59 and the E-Residency Festival for your shareholders meeting and some business meetings, then you get closer and closer to be a company, or to be a company that is regarded of being substantial in that country, and then the local tax regime applies. But here I highly recommend to get consultancy by a certified tax advisor who is familiar with both, or at least who is very well familiar with your tax residence country's foreign income taxation. Period.
I would double underline what Christoph just said. you will probably have a very hard time finding someone. Maybe in Europe it's a little bit easier, but you're often going to have a hard time finding one person who knows everything about your entire situation. So you may end up having to have a sort of team of tax consultants. That's what I had to do in my case. I have a Korean tax consultant, an Estonian one, and a team in the US because it's that complicated. Yeah. I also wanted to jump back really quickly to one thing about dividend taxation. Be very careful and know what your local tax laws are before you pay yourself a dividend from your Estonian company. Someone asked earlier what was one thing I would like do over again or double check or whatever. One thing is definitely make sure that you understand how dividend and board member fee taxes work, because those are not always covered by tax treaties. In the case that I were to pay myself a dividend from my Estonian company, I would effectively get triple taxed on it. I would get taxed on the Estonian side at 20% at the corporate level. Then I would have to pay dividend taxes in both South Korea and in the US. Neither of them is going to recognize that corporate dividend tax payment as a deduction from my personal taxes. Both countries, South Korea and the US, impose personal dividend taxes on the receiving side, so they double tax dividends. And to cap it all off, neither of them includes dividends or board member salaries in double tax avoidance treaties. So be very, very careful before you pay yourself out in that manner.
Okay.
There is a question here by Thomas Koromilas, Greece guy. I'm not quite sure if I fully understand. Maybe we have the option to open Thomas' microphone and let him elaborate on that himself. Pile, I guess you can do that if Thomas is fine. Yeah, you can click in the. I can't, but if you are as the host, you could scroll through the attendance list and unmute them.
Thomas. Thomas Metric, is it? Okay.
Thomas. No, it's Thomas.
Koromilas.
Koromilas. Yeah.
Yeah, Thomas. You can speak. Hello.
Yeah, Thomas, you need to unmute yourself first, and then you can ask your question again, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning from Greece. I would like to ask the Christopher and Ian that have experience about this, my question, excuse me for low, for not good English. I work in web development, web design, and I would like to open an Estonian online business where I can work international and to find customers, working to deposit my invoices to Estonia bank. And I want to ask if my idea, as I have it in my mind, can be reality without any problems.
I didn't quite catch what you said about Estonian banks. Could you repeat that part of it?
Yes. I would like to ask, before 1 month, I was speaking with some partners from E-Residency Estonia website. I can't remember the name of the company, and told me, reply in my email that they can open for me a banking account. And of course, after my registration as E-Registry Estonian card, where I can deposit my invoices from many future customers and to create my online company. This online company, I can working from all the places excuse me, it will be the national company. I can work from Greece, I can work from Germany, I can work from USA, I can work from any part of the world. Just I want to be sure if I registration, excuse me, for my e-card, Estonia card, it will be reality and I will not have some problem to run it from Greece.
Okay. Yeah.
As long as you declare your taxes to Greece as well, you will not have problems. But I cannot guarantee you not to have any problems. So I guess you were referring to problems with the Greek tax authority.
Okay. In this case, I would like to share with us that I work already in a business, in a private business here in Greece. So I have my tax to my country.
Kind of problems.
But in case I want to create my own business here in Greece, I need to get out from all my already job and to create something my own. Just I have some problems like house pay rent and all the others behind. And I found this idea in Estonian, and this is my serious reason that I am here today. And I, of course, listen your words, your experience words, and here was the line I make. My question. That's all. I'm glad to hear your opinions, and I note them down for my future use. Thank you so much for allowing me to hear you. Ian and Christopher, and of course, Miss, I can't keep her name. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's Billa.
Billa, nice to meet you, Billa.
Meet you.
So let me try and answer your questions here. Like creating a company with e-residency isn't automatically going to guarantee your business success, obviously. It will also not guarantee that you can get a Estonian bank account, but since you're in Greece, which is in the Eurozone, then if you get a notarized document from Estonia saying that your company exists, you should not have any problems opening a local Greek bank account in the event that LHV or an Estonian bank is not interested in opening one for you. Being from the EU though, starting a single shareholder company, doing web design, then I would not immediately see any problems. You're usually exactly the kind of customer that the banks like to see, so I would not expect any problems there. You also have the option of doing TransferWise. TransferWise is really great. You can do next day payments inside the EU, and it's really simple. As Christoph said, that you're going to be registered as a Greek tax resident, so your company will just need to make sure that it pays the regular income taxes in Greece. E-residency is just a tool to make everything easier for managing your company because you can do everything online. That's
thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much,
Yep.
Ian. Very useful your information for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Not at the moment, I don't think so. But Christoph, you mentioned that you want to come back to the community aspect again.
Of course, let's do that.
So can you tell us what's the most important?
And there was...
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, there was one question earlier somewhere, I don't know if in the chat somewhere I read the question of like, if you started over again, what would you have done differently, and what were your biggest mistakes? I think I would have tried to Kirill, Wissam, Arzu, Michel, Lorenzo, Ignacio earlier, and try to build this platform earlier. I mean, it took me 1.5 years
That's a good
into
point, yeah.
the existence of my company until we finally did that. And the idea
We're losing you again, Christoph.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
I think. Sorry.
Can you repeat?
Yeah, actually, I was just. I guess Ian has the more stable connection and can most probably repeat what I wanted to say because he knows the whole story.
So I think what Christoph was trying to say was that he would have liked to start a community like this earlier, because there are so many wonderful people in the e-residency community that we can come together to share our experiences about how to run a company, and even to find future business partners. For example, one of the other co-founders of Erika, Arzu, who is also probably pretty well known even to the people on this webinar, she does a tourism company called Walks in Europe, and I'm actually working with her right now on an app that's going to take her tourism business to the next level, or so that's the hope. And so watch out for a collaboration with us launching next year sometime. Yeah, the community of e-residents is really something special. As I like to say, I don't think I've ever met an e-resident that I couldn't become friends with. I've already met a few dozen e-residents on their way passing through Seoul here, as well as probably like 50 or so over the course of the years in Estonia. Yeah, it's a really awesome community. So you should definitely join us in Erika. I think let's go back to the health insurance question if Christoph's connection is back.
Yeah. First, I want to emphasize also again one thing about Erika, which we originally founded as like a political representation. So the idea was we're about like 70,000 e-residents now, running close to 10,000 companies, and that means as non-residents we are all subject to Estonian regulation, to Estonian taxation, without any direct influence to that. And so the underlying idea of Erika was to tackle that issue and to have a platform from which we can speak with one voice towards Estonian lawmakers once there is a reason for that. So actually, we are quite happy with the political circumstances at this point of time. But we were sure that one day there will be issues, one day there will be conflicting interests between Estonian lawmakers and the community of e-residents. And then we better have the platform in place already than needing to struggle, being in a struggle to form and organize it then. So that was how we started Erika in the first place. But then we quickly found out that there is an aspect of it that's even equally beneficial, and that's the community aspect. So there is a quite active e-residency group on Facebook, but it feels a bit like this is a group especially for people in their very early stage of e-residency who just want to know the basic things and figure out if they want to start or not. But this is not really the place to share experience on a deeper level. And we found out that in our community platform, to which you can only register with your Estonian ID, so there is no anonymity. You are there with your full name, and everyone knows this person who is answering the question, who is asking the question, is real, is identity checked, and most probably is also running an Estonian company, or if I'm not sure, I can look that up easily due to through the public registers. And so here we can discuss business-related questions, travel-related questions, all kind of e-residency-related questions and off-topic questions on a very much higher level of trust than in any Facebook group. That leads to meeting people like we did following your invitation, Pile, from the e-residency office in September, when a bunch of us came to the island of Vormsi, a remote little island in Estonia, for a hackathon, the Digital Nation hackathon, and met people who we already knew, like Ian was probably the one with the longest commute coming from South Korea. But I met people like Martin, the Danish guy who is living in Germany now, and who's just texted me half an hour ago. So this is a community where we are we're establishing friendships and already agreed. I hope I'm not telling secrets here, Ian, to meet in end of January or February in Vietnam. To co-work and co-live together. Ian will be there. Martin, I think Martin will be there as well. And whoever wants to join, maybe from the audience. I guess we're
let's make it a group trip.
Cool. Yeah. So this is what e-residence is pretty much about. And yeah, Verena is, so thank you. That was what I wanted to point out before coming back to the topic of health insurance, which is high in the question list now. But maybe Ian, do you want to add something?
I was just going to say, and I'm on my way to meet an Estonian right after this as we plan the birthday event that's happening in Seoul on Thursday.
That's great.
Wait a second. Is this the Martin Gregersen who just asked the question here in the chat about Portugal the NHR people? Martin, is this you? If it's you, I guess maybe Xenia. So I definitely know an e-resident in. Cool. Good to see you.
Oh, hey, Martin. That's amazing.
How small this world is. Yes, Martin, Xenia is definitely an e-resident living in Portugal, and I could imagine that she has the NHR status. If not, she will for sure know somebody. We can, I will connect you via Telegram. I mean, your Telegram is open here in the other window anyway. Just wrote me. I will, and you asked for the German accountant. Yeah. You will get it. Yeah. So Verena's question about the health insurance. This is a very complex thing, and we've actually just discussed this 2 hours earlier with the Estonian guys sitting on the other table, other side table here. It all depends on your personal circumstances. If you are, let's say the easy case is the Estonian guy over here. He is still registered in Estonia. He is employed there by a company who pays social taxes in Estonia for him. And so he is generally covered by the Estonian public health insurance system, which works within the territory of Estonia, and in emergency cases. Oh, I didn't order that, but I could have. Thank you. But I guess that was for her. Could you bring another one? Yeah, cool. Thank you. Just the same. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. So the European social security system works within the European Union. So you cannot get your regular dental treatment or see your gynecologist if you're traveling Europe. But if you break your leg or get some flu, I've ordered another one for you. They will help you. But that only works within the territory of the European Union. And if you go beyond, then you need another solution. In the case of this guy here, it's just a travel insurance. He's traveling Asia for 3 months maybe, and then you just get some basic travel insurance coverage, which will help you in case of emergencies on the ground, and in case of severe need of medical treatment, they will fly you back. So this is always on top of your general health insurance coverage that you have in your home country, and the travel insurance will fly you back, create you, things like that. But they will not provide you with the standard everyday treatments, and especially not for chronic diseases. So if you suffer from diabetes or anything like that, this will always be excluded from travel insurance. They will neither cover the regular treatments, nor, and that's the dangerous part, nor cover major stuff that follows from that. So let's say you suffer from diabetes and you take medication for 2 days and end up in the hospital. This will not be covered by a travel insurance. And most people are not aware of that. Then there are things like long-term international health insurance, like safety wings, world nomads, and whatever they are called. They are a bit more advanced, but also exclude pre-existing conditions and chronic diseases. And especially they have a limited contract duration of usually up to 12 months, and then a rolling period. So the contract will be extended if it's not being terminated by one side. And let's say you start figuring out that you suffer from diabetes or you catch a chronic disease. Then, of course, this contract will be extended. And then you have a problem that provides, like most or all countries within the European Union, you can go back to your home country then and will be covered there. But this is an option that's not so attractive if you have a long-term idea of being location independent. So if you do it like myself, I've signed off from Germany and I have no intention to ever come back there. So even in a situation when I wanted to settle down, raise a family or something, this will most probably be not in Germany. So as of today, if I came to that situation, consider Singapore maybe. So this means I do not want to have this Damocles sword over my head that when I grow old, when I start getting sick and ill, that I have to go back to my social security system in the country where I come from. That's just not attractive. So the other option for that is try to get a long-term private health insurance with worldwide coverage with a contract duration that's infinite, that cannot be cancelled or terminated by the insurance company, and that does not have any limits. And most people don't know that this even exists, but actually this exists only in Germany. That might be surprising. Verena, your name sounds like German, and many people in Germany have prejudice against the private health insurance system because it has here and there some issues, but it's the only system in the world where you have a premium calculated, flattened over the rest of your life. That there is a calculated lifespan, a calculated cost for medical treatments for the rest of your life. So the insurance companies, they have big tables, they have big numbers, they have reinsurance behind that. So they, not on an individual basis, but on a bigger scale basis, they can tell you exactly. They can tell you exactly when you will die and how much costs you will produce until then. And so they sum this up and then divide it by the number of months until then, add a little premium on that for their margin and for risk. And that's your monthly premium. And that makes your private health insurance a bit costly when you're young. You can start in your 20s with about 300 euros a month. I currently pay 350 euros a month for my international unlimited worldwide coverage health insurance. And I know that only inflation in the medical sector will influence this price, but that's the price I will pay for the rest of my life. If you look into I have an annual deductible of 1,440 euros per year, and that's it. I know that I have worldwide access to best possible medical treatment, best possible hospitals and doctors, and this company will pay for it. But this is not easy accessible for people from outside of Germany, especially from outside of the European Union. I'm currently working with my German business partner, Markus, who is also e-resident now and familiar to Ian. We're establishing a new company in Estonia that's applying for the Estonian insurance broker's license to exactly focus on this. Because I did not talk about that in the beginning, what I'm doing for business. So we've learned Ian is a tech guy, I'm an insurance guy. So my little company, my team in Germany is a specialized insurance broker for children's health insurance in Germany. So our core business is to help parents in Germany to get the right health insurance coverage for their children. But as people are asking more and more about international coverage, and we started comparing the Anglo-Saxonian system of health insurance, travel insurance, with a German system of health insurance, we gathered some knowledge and experience here, and will offer consultancy for that soon. But we will definitely also share all these basic knowledge in videos on our website, because we don't want to start with every consultancy with Adam and Eve and try to explain to people the difference between travel insurance, long-term health insurance, public social system. So we will lay that out and only consult you if you promise that you have made yourself aware of all these facts and you want to dig deeper and want to talk about premiums and personal circumstances, maybe family situation and things like that. But I promise all this basic information will be for free forever for everybody.
That's great, Christoph. Thank you. But time is more than up. Maybe we'll take one more question and then we should wrap it up. Either of you want to answer one?
I'm reading Thomas's question again here. Real quick, while I'm reading that, most cases, if you're not a digital nomad or something like that, then you can just get local health insurance wherever you live. Like in my case, then I just have regular health insurance here in Korea. Okay, Thomas, Estonian business become alive and run it without a problem. Pay tax to the Estonian system. I already pay tax in Greece. You shouldn't end up paying double taxes, Thomas. You should only end up paying taxes in one country. In your case, probably in Greece. There are double taxation avoidance treaties. If Greece says that your company is tax residents in Greece, which it probably will, then you would have no liability on the Estonian side. So you don't need to worry about double taxation.
I'd like to answer the questions of Josip.
Yep.
He asked if he can pay out a bonus to his customers.
Mm-hmm.
So this sounds a bit to me like a cashback or kickback system or commission on something. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is possible if you have a proper invoice or receipt for your accounting for that. So if everything is clear how this is connected to the product and your business, that this is not just some random payout to some random person, then it shouldn't be a problem. Then it will be considered as company expenses and costs inside your company. But you should make clear and make sure that the money received is being taxed properly on the side of the recipient. And if you should talk with your accountant about the standards of the document, because otherwise it will be regarded as fringe benefits and you have to pay taxes on that. So if you pay out random money to random people, then you have to pay 20% taxes on that in Estonia. That's like, for example, if you, that actually
I thought it was higher.
For all non-business related expenses. It's 20% flat tax on everything. It's unless you have to pay social taxes as well, which might apply if the recipient is an Estonian resident. But in your case, let's keep it simple. If this is a consumer in another country than Estonia, you would have to pay 20% fringe benefits taxes, like you would do, for example, if you have not business related expenses, like
your wife dinner. Is a hotel room or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let's take that. Yeah, if you have travel expenses for your company, you fly to a conference in Chiang Mai for the SEO conference here, and you do not travel alone, but you take your spouse with you, then you would have to pay taxes for half of the accommodation costs.
Assuming she's not relevant to the business trip, yes.
Yeah, Ian is already pointing to the loopholes.
Okay, great. But thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. Thank you, Ian and Christoph. It was, to me, it was really educative. I got smarter. I hope it was.
So even you learned something of that when something. We explained to you the Estonian system. Cool. I see that you record this. Will this be publicly available?
If you allow us. This is up to you, Ian and Christoph.
Yes.
With you,
yes, please.
And we would like to upload it on our website as well. Yeah. And to everyone,
I give my consent irrevocably.
Thank you. And everyone who was listening, we do have one more webinar coming up with 2 Erika board members next week. So you are more than welcome to listen in then as well. And we do have several other webinars during November and December. So you are welcome to join any of them. But thank you.
Who are the others next week?
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Make some promo for that. Wait, my connection. Yep. Better.